Hi, this is Jeff Blauette, technical agronomist with Cooperative Farmers Elevator. And on this week's Field Friday segment, I kind of wanted to, take a look at this corn and how it's doing right now after some of the things that it's been through. I'm in a field here by Alvord, so this was in one of the areas that took a lot of wind damage. And just wanted to talk about, what's that doing to this corn and some of these, what these plants are trying to deal with. We've got a fair amount of southern rust out here. It's in a lot of fields. We've got a lot of pressure. I don't know if it's quite to the level of last year, although the story is not over yet, but it does a lot of damage to the green tissue, you might say, and making it a lot less effective at photosynthesizing and trying to, feed these ears and finish them out. Going down through central Iowa this past weekend, I see there's fields that are literally all October brown, I think you'd call it. They're completely no green left in them from the road, right across from a field that maybe is really green yet, like this one, for instance. Historically, going down there in the early fall for a lot of years, what happens in central Iowa is usually about a week ahead of what happens here, so I wonder if we're going to see some of the same thing. I'm guessing it's southern rust down there, really doing a lot of damage. I didn't stop and look at any fields, but I think I know what I'm looking at. If we get that here, we're going to have some problems with the corn yields too on the fields that didn't get sprayed. This field's got some southern rust in it, but there is a lot of green here. This one did get sprayed, but I wonder about some of these fields that did not. We did a little study in the, just kind of a little hand check in a couple of our test plots, and I got some pictures of some defoliation that we did on some of these plants. So if you look at the plants, you can see several things that we did. We tore all the leaves off. This is about the time the tassels were emerging. We tore all the leaves off some plants. We took every other leaf off the plants, which would really simulate 50% defoliation or 50% disease damaged photosynthetic area. Then we just took the leaves above the ear completely off, left the ones below on it, and then we did the opposite. We tore all the leaves off below the ear, and then we left the leaves above on. So how a corn plant basically works is all the leaves from the ear leaf and up basically are what's feeding that ear. If they're all healthy and doing well, they're going to feed that ear really well. The leaves below the ear typically are mostly involved with keeping that stalk healthy. Obviously the leaves above the ear are much more important than the leaves below the ear, although they're both important. So if you look at those plants and what the examples are, I took the ears and I just did kind of a kernel count estimate. Obviously we haven't combined it, we just did a short strip of each to demo. But you can see the yields that I calculated just on a kernel count basis. You can see how important that leaf area above that ear is. When we tear all that off, we basically don't get much for corn. Hardly worth mentioning, less than 30 bushel an acre. Probably would be less than that if you actually combine it because the ears are pretty small and a lot of nubbins. If you look at the high end, you might say, where everything was kind of left normal, 215 would be what it would do if we wouldn't have had any damage. So you can kind of see the various levels and what that did to influence that plant and how well it was able to try and finish that ear. Something else that happened with this wind, if it had a really good root system and didn't break over, what it might have done is, I've got a picture here of what happened to an ear that would basically simulate tearing all the leaves off above the ear. It snapped off probably one leaf above the ear, and you can see what that ear looks like. There's some of that out here. And then of course we had some that root lodged. We had enough wind that we actually literally broke some of the brace roots off. I've got pictures of kind of what that looks like, and ripped the roots loose. Obviously that's not good, and it's going to damage the yields in some too. But so if you look at some of these plants, we've got a lot of these slivered up leaves. Most of the area has some of that in various stages and various severity. Basically, when we tore and tattered all these leaves, obviously we impacted how well they can photosynthesize. So a lot of these things are things that are probably going to take some of the ultra high top end that we were looking at earlier this summer away, if you had some wind damage. If you didn't, you're in an area where it wasn't much, consider yourself lucky, because we had a wide swath of our area that does have some of this stuff going on. But I think it's going to be another one of those years where, like last year, we had a pretty sizable response to fungicides because of the southern rust. I was kind of in the camp that southern rust doesn't overwinter here. We've had it 2 years prior to this year. We've had it 2 years in my career. I said pretty good chance we won't have that problem this year. Shows what I know. This is the second year in a row where we did have the right conditions. I don't know, there's no documentation that it overwinters here. I don't know if I still think that's the case, but either way, regardless, we have some southern rust causing some problems. On the tar spot front, you know, we've talked about that in the past, but I just don't see it. It may come in yet. I don't anticipate it doing anything if we do have it, but haven't seen it do anything damage-wise, but we've got enough damage from what we do have, and it's mainly southern rust this year. We do have some Goss's wilt showing up, especially in the west where we have some pressure. All these torn up and damaged leaves allowed some infection to occur. They were entry points, and we've talked about that in the past. Some of that's really coming in here at the end. So all of these things are going to influence the final finish and how well we can get the kernel depth and the kernel fill to get to black layer here. And then that's, hopefully we don't end up with some of that really cold weather that starts causing some other leaf tissue damage from something else. That's way too early for that, but it's supposed to be pretty cold here, and I think these mornings are getting colder than I'd like to see. Hopefully it's not enough to do any damage there, but kind of wanted to go over what's going on out in the corn and what to expect from it and what to look for. The last thing I would say, and we talk about it every year, it's going to be again a factor. We need to make sure we're taking a look at these fields here as we get down the road here and evaluate harvest standability, because I think if we have a really big pollination that happened, if we had good pollination conditions, which a lot of fields did, we pollinated a lot of grain, we're trying to fill it all and feed it all, then we have some of these damage things happening, we may cannibalize that stock just to try and finish it, and that might hurt standability later. I guess we'll see, and we might talk about that here in another couple weeks. But just wanted to give you a snapshot of what I'm seeing out in the corn. That's this week's Field Friday segment, and we'll see you next week.